No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Fulhamish project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit purina.com/purple to learn more.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast. And now we're on the other side of yet another international break. We can start to look forward to the real football returning. But although we're not the biggest fan of the international break, it has given us a whole fortnight to stare at the Premier League table with a big cheesy grin on our faces as we occupy a Champions League place. But the fun does get going once again, and it takes us on the road to the big smoke as we travel south to take on Fulham, where the rumours have been circulating over the last week or so. So it's going to be interesting hearing all about that. And luckily enough, we have one of the experts from the Fulham fan website and podcast, Fulhamish, because we're very pleased to welcome Elizabeth Barnard. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hiya, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Really excited for Saturday. I always find the international break is like quite an unfortunate pause, especially this time of the season. So many games, so many of them. So yeah, really excited for Saturday.
Yeah, is this, well, look, we're new to the Premier League. Is this normal? 3 international breaks in 11 games or something?
I know, it feels crazy. It feels like we're barely getting started before we're stopping again. But yeah, looking forward to, I think from now we got a good run of games, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like I want to go back to the Championship, so we'll play Saturday, Tuesday. There was more fun in that.
Very much so.
Yeah. I mean, as well, I was looking at as well in terms of the league fixture between the two sides. I was saying we've only played once in the league, well, home and away, of course, once in the last 10 years.
Mm.
So it's good to have the fixture back, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. We've managed to avoid each other despite hovering around similar kind of places for a while. But I think we came up to the Premier League in 2022, the year you guys got promoted. Maybe it was the year before that. And then obviously had that season in the Championship together, 2017-18. But
yes,
otherwise,
we try and forget that season, by the way. We try and wipe that one.
Every single Fulham fan that's watched Sunderland till I die, like it's the worst season to be immortalised on Netflix ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, very few times have we crossed paths, so it's quite exciting, really.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Sunderland must be the only side who's had 2 documentaries made about them that has covered relegation seasons. Because we had the Premier Passions back in the mid-90s as well, that the BBC did. So I don't think we should ever have another documentary done, or else it'll go south. But yeah, of course, I mean, one of the reasons we contacted Fulhamish was because you are the leading site for all things Fulham. Of course, that goes without saying. But what's the history behind Fulhamish and kind of what's it all about?
Well, we're just about to celebrate next year, celebrating our 10-year anniversary, which is really exciting. So 10 years ago, it was a few lads and a few microphones. Basically, we didn't really feel there was a Fulham podcast out there that was doing what we wanted to see, like post-game reaction, that kind of thing. And also really, really exciting opportunity for a lot of people who wanted to start talking about football with their mates. And yeah, I got involved sort of lockdown time, after lockdown, with the show. And yeah, now we're a full-on many member team, loads of people doing all sorts of bits and bobs. We've got a producer that does like all our editing. We've got about 25 different people who talk about Fulham. And we do 2 shows a week. So we do our post-match podcast, and then we do a show like sort of looking forward to the weekend that's a bit more holistic on Thursday, called The Thursday Club, inventive name. And all kinds of videos as well on YouTube. So yeah, if Sunderland win this weekend, you guys won't be short of content to feast your eyes on and your ears on, for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. I watched the Thursday Murder Club over the weekend on Netflix, actually, just out of interest. I watched that. But yeah, I mean, our listeners can't see, but you've actually got a Fulhamish microphone, which gives me I mean, we don't do video, but if we did, I mean, I'm just is the next thing, is you're going to get a backdrop or anything like that? Do you
I
guys
know.
do
Well,
kind of video?
we have got some frames. Some frames here and here, but that's that. Yeah, we do quite a lot on YouTube, and I'm filming some bits for YouTube later today, which is why the mic muff's on. But yeah, it's really like grown very much, and I got involved at a great time. I feel very lucky and love doing it. So yeah, it's the best thing in the world being able to talk about Fulham with your friends.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, talking about football, God, we could do it all day, couldn't we? But just in terms of being a Fulham fan, so how far do you go back, and how did you get into supporting Fulham?
It's Taylor's honest time. My dad is a Fulham fan.
That's the one.
So he never really he like always I was allowed to do what I wanted, obviously, but there was never really the option in terms of like I could support who I wanted, but he would only ever take me to Fulham games or buy me Fulham kits. So it wasn't that hard. And yeah, so I go I still go most weeks, and yeah, got super into it, I would say, in my teenage years. So probably about the time that Sunderland last played Fulham was when I like really got into it and started watching. I would go with my dad when I was a kid, but I wasn't so interested in it. And yeah, and then the last few years it's just escalated and escalated.
So does that mean you just missed out on maybe that golden era with Roy Hodgson and Europe and all of that?
Yeah, very disappointingly. I don't remember any of
Yeah.
that. I was
Oh
like,
no.
well, I mean, I wasn't young enough that it's excusable, but I was just not interested in football. I was like an 8-year-old who was doing other things. So very sadly missed out on all of it.
No. Well, you just have to get another era like that, because you're almost on the cusp of it, which we'll come on
Well,
to.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's it. Well, actually, I mean, I was looking. You're talking about that era, that Roy Hodgson era, when you started getting into it, because I imagine you maybe got into it just after that. I mean, it was a 13-year stint in the Premier League, which ended in
Yeah.
2014. And just looking at that relegation for a couple of years after that, really struggled in the Championship, finishing 17th and 20th, and not that far away from being relegated to League One. I mean, was the club in a bit of a mess at that point?
Yeah, I think, well, we got new owners in around that time, and it just didn't quite feel like anyone had a handle on what was going on. And we weren't buying the right players, and it was difficult. And yeah, I think it's a tale as old as time that, coming down from the Championship and then being quite worried about going down to League One. I mean, we saw it as recently as last season with Luton. And parachute payments have kind of changed things, but I do still think that volatility is felt, and that it was definitely felt those years, like your 2014-15 kind of time at Fulham.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, look, because obviously Sunderland fans know all about that, but there was then 5 years where Fulham just kind of hopped and flipped between the Championship and Premier League and became a proper yo-yo club. But that last promotion in 2022, which you were talking about there, I mean, that's been backed up with 3 years finishing mid-table in the top flight. Did it feel like that last promotion was different to the other ones in terms of being ready for the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look back with the benefit of hindsight and say, yeah, I always knew. But I do think that we really, in the 2 years that we came up in 2018 and 2020 when we came up, we won the playoffs, which I know Sunderland have won the playoffs and are now establishing Premier League stability, but
Trying.
it's quite trying. Well, you guys are in the Champions League places, so I think you can say quite comfortably. But it's quite difficult to come up through the playoffs, especially, and establish Premier League stability. And also, when you come up through the playoff, it means you've not had a knockout season. You've had a really good season and you finished between third and sixth, but you've not stormed the league. But and Slavisa Kanovic, I feel like with hindsight, a lot of Fulham fans would have given him more time. This was 2018, but at the time he looked quite out of his depth as a manager. And then Scott Parker, who is managing with Burnley. I mean, Fulham fans hate Scott Parker for lots of reasons, but he just wasn't able to play interesting football. We weren't able to score any goals. And ultimately, if you can't score a goal, the maximum points you'll get is 1 in a game. And usually you'll get 0 because the opposition will score. And we scored 9 home goals that season. It was a COVID season, one to forget. But coming up under Silva, we had been so amazing in the Championship. We'd scored over 100 goals. We'd won 7-0 3 times individually. We'd won 6-2 a couple of times, a couple of 5-1s. We'd had these really impressive scorelines with a very good squad and a really good manager. And it just felt like it could be different this time. And our first game in the Premier League, it was August 2022 against Liverpool. And everyone was saying, it's going to be classic. Liverpool are going to beat you 3-0, and back to reality. But we managed to come away with a point that day. And from that day on, it really felt like anything was possible. And it's been a dream come true, really, to be able to establish this level of Premier League security, at least in the short term. But we'll see what comes in the future.
Yeah. Just go back to that Scott Parker comment. I mean, is that purely because of his move to Bournemouth, or was there more to it?
I think it's twofold. Firstly, the football we played under him was awful, and we had actually quite a good squad that season. People like Ademola Lookman, who went on to score a hat-trick in the Europa League final. Joachim Andersen, who's now our starting centre-back, was in that squad. Frank Zambo and Gisa, who's tearing up at Napoli. Like loads of players who were really good in that squad. Ruben Loftus-Cheek was in that squad. Tete and Robinson still as fullbacks. And so to be able to only score 9 home goals and the football was so dire. And he also didn't play Mitrovic at all. And there was a lot of chat about how Mitrovic wasn't good enough for the Premier League, but I think Mitrovic has shown that he can cut it at the top level, even though he left for Saudi after one season in the Premier League with us. So that was all uncomfortable. But then the way he left, he basically was trying to get sacked quite clearly through comments in press conferences. And then the day before pre-season, he upped and left us for Bournemouth. And it just felt very disingenuous in terms of he was obviously clearly wanting the payout, but the payout wasn't coming. So he left us at the last minute. And thank God Marco Silva was so good, because that could have been a real spiral, losing our head coach just before pre-season in that year.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I wasn't aware that it was ran so deep for the Fulham fans. I know the Bournemouth move, but just going on the last 3 years, because finishing 10th and 13th, and actually, at the start of this season, Sunderland, and we still do to be a certain extent without getting carried away, but that's kind of what we're aspiring to, and you've had 2 quarter-final appearances in the FA Cup, you've had a semi-final appearance in the League Cup. I mean, have Fulham fans just been enjoying these last few years?
Yeah, hugely. I think there are 2 schools of thoughts, really. Like, there are obviously people who always want us to push on and be more ambitious and are disappointed with certain ways that things are happening on the pitch. But overall, like, I don't have a short memory about what the yo-yo years were quite tough. I don't have a short memory about what it was like when we were in the lower echelons of the Championship either. So being able to establish Premier League security, and we've had so many standout results in that time. Every year has a few memories that people are saying, some of the best moments of their lives, let alone their football watching lives. So, yeah, some absolute standout moments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just you mentioned memories there. Just quickly, in terms of memories of playing Sunderland, because like I said, we played once in the league in the last 10 years, and we've only had that cup. But is those basically the memories, that cup games? And we had the cup games in 2015 as well. But it's weird that our last 6, our last 6 games, 4 of them have been in the FA Cup.
Yeah, I must say, personally, I don't have that many memories. Of course, I remember the 2017-18 season going up to Sunderland. I didn't go, thank God, because imagine just before Christmas, and then we'd also lost. I think my mum would have been quite displeased. I was like 17 at the time, so swinging it would have been quite tough. Um, but that is really my only memory of, like, watching that game, seeing that game. Um, yeah, it feels like we haven't met for a long while.
No, and I'm looking back at that one in 2018, and I'm staggered that we took the lead, to be honest. Craven Cottage. I was kind of rubbing my eyes going, "Surely not." But, yeah, we took the lead, and we were truly awful, and you were running away with it. But, you mentioned kind of going back to these 3 years that you're having, and it is an
Mm.
interesting period, because the amount of clubs that you've seen hit this, you might wanna call it a buffer or whatever it is. You have all these years of consolidating yourself, and I think if you look back at maybe Charlton back in the day, Stoke City maybe, there always seems to be a point where these clubs, you aspire to finish mid-table every year and consolidate yourself, and when that happens, everyone goes, "Right, well, what next?" Is
Mm.
that kind of where Fulham are at the moment?
I think so. I think this season is an interesting one because we're currently sitting 15th and we're a point or two outside the relegation zone. So it's not as happy days as it has been. I think Fulham fans are overall quite optimistic we'll be able to turn things around. We've had quite a difficult run of fixtures. And only really did the performance at Everton
Mm.
create problems for us. In terms of pushing on, I do think the expanded European calendar definitely provides a lot more interest for fans of teams like Fulham. In terms of, we know that most years you can finish 8th and still get into Europe, whereas in the olden days, that was never possible. So it was no point really trying. That was never going to happen. Um, and even if you're sitting in 12th at Christmas, you go on a good run and then suddenly you're in 8th and things start to look quite good. So I do think that has meant that Fulham fans will get a bit more interested in the league, but we do tail off towards the end of seasons. And I think, having seen what Palace did last year, all I really want is to do something in the cups, to be honest.
Well, you nearly had us in tears there, because when I was a teenager, Peter Reid managed to finish 7th in the Premier League twice in a row, and we didn't qualify for Europe. So I was absolutely gutted as a kid. But I mean, looking at again, you talk about the building up to this season. You've had those 3 years, a bit of success in the cup,
Mm.
good performances in the league. Would you say Marco Silva was then backed in the summer? Because, like I said, you hit that point where you think, right, well, we'll kick on now. We need to kind of take that next step. But it looks like they put all their eggs in one basket with signing Kevin in the summer.
I think when looking at the summer business now, everyone's like, oh, you had a relatively decent window. You brought in some players. The squad didn't need too much work to it. But looking at when those signings come, before deadline day, our only signing was a backup goalkeeper. It was not soon enough. We started the season with the same squad that we had the season before, and it meant that Silva didn't have any time really to work with the new players. And we've seen it in the past, but he really needs a preseason with players to get them learning what he wants and stuff. And while Kevin has had moments, I do think, again, if he'd had 4 more weeks at Fulham with more time, where games weren't being played every weekend that they had to prepare for, I think things actually might look very different. But because everything comes so late in the window, it's really difficult for those ideas to be embedded. And the squad currently doesn't look particularly cohesive in terms of ideas and patterns, generally, even if we have had some good performances and good games at points.
Yeah. But I mean, it seemed to raise a few eyebrows when you bought Kevin, because, listening to, just people talking heads on radio and all that sort of stuff,
Mm.
they were saying he was highly rated by, your Man Cities, your Liverpools, they were all tracking him. And then he ended up going to Fulham. I think it was, what was it, 35 million or something in the end?
Yeah, it's a club record signing, a lot of money.
Mm.
And he's been very exciting. Like, it's so exciting to see a player that takes on other players and that kind of thing. He's still very young and he's still quite an immature player in terms of, I don't think he reads the game particularly well, which I think is fine. But yeah, I wish he'd more time. And he's also very effective off the bench, but he's not always so effective when he starts.
Mm. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, so what were the noises coming out of the club? Let's say before a ball was kicked, because I can, you can see Marco Silva's kind of an ambitious fella, an ambitious manager. And he would have wanted to kick the club on. So what were the noises coming out of the club? Was there kind of a bit of unrest saying, well, he'd have preferred, maybe 4 or 5 players rather than just Kevin for that amount of money?
Yeah, there was a lot of discontent coming from Silva about the timing of the signing specifically. I think when they came, he was perfectly happy with them in some ways. It is kind of unbelievable that we didn't bring in a defensive midfielder, considering what we've currently got in that pivot. And there's just we're crying out for another body in midfield. The rest of the signings were all fine, but because they came so late, there wasn't the time to get them up to speed with a pre-season. So yeah, he was very outwardly discontented during the window for sure.
Yeah. So what did that mean for Fulham fans? So let's again go back to a ball was kicked. What were Fulham fans thinking? Because you imagine after those 3 years, the instinct would have been, right, let's go into the top 10. Let's really, challenge those top 7, 6, 7 positions. And I hate doing that because my kids keep doing that all of the time. I realise what I've just done, and I hate myself for it. But and I'm not going to satisfy them by doing it. But yeah. So what were the expectations before a ball would kick for Fulham fans?
I think it was a mix of like any season in the Premier League where we're going in with Silva feels good. It feels exciting to be back. But equally, there was a lot of frustration about business in the summer and lack of business in the summer because obviously when we went in, we'd only signed a backup goalkeeper at the start of the season. So it was really frustrating. And that first game against Brighton, like obviously the feeling of, oh, it's so great to be back and it was an away day, it was great. And we had a last minute winner. But also for a lot of the time, the squad just didn't really look that great. And the performance wasn't amazing. So, yeah, it was.
The Who's Down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Yeah, well, we've got, 5 games in. You've won 2, drawn 2. You've only lost against Chelsea, which, of course, is a big blow that you don't want to get beat Chelsea. But at the same time, in those first 5 games, you'd only lost 1. So you must have thought, actually, he's just continuing where we left off last season.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, the Brighton game, a point away in the Premier League is always great for us. The Man United game, we always lose against Man United at home, and it's always a last-minute winner. So the fact that we didn't was pretty amazing. And then Chelsea, there was a very, very controversial disallowed goal that Howard Webb actually went on their, the ref talk thing he does and said that it was incorrectly disallowed. And that just totally changed the game. And I think Chelsea ended up winning that 2-0, and you could say, oh, it would have been 2-1. But actually, that kind of thing, when heads drop, you can't really... it would have been 1-0 at that point, and then maybe it would have been 2-1 and that would have been fine. But the mentality on the pitch, just like the players were totally lost their heads. And I understand why. I don't know if any sports psychology can train that out of you. And then coming back after the international break, 2 wins in a row, feeling pretty positive. The game against Leeds, Fulham were dreadful in, as were Leeds. I didn't watch the game live, but I watched Match Today highlights. And all the commentator was saying was how bad the game had been, but obviously we won. And then that game against Brentford, which was an 8 p.m, and it was a great atmosphere. And it was 3-1. It honestly could have been 5-1 that day. We were so much better than them, and it was amazing because we hate Brentford. So yeah, pretty good.
Well, yeah, but then that kind of weird because everything just kind of turned on its head after that. 5 defeats in the last 6 games, only a win over Wolves in that run. But I mean, I was looking at the fixtures though. You had Bournemouth, who were really on a good run at the time. Arsenal,
Yeah.
who, of course, on that run. Newcastle away, which is I'm going to give them that. It's a tough game, and that's all I'll give them. But those are tough games. I mean, was it just a bad run of fixtures, or did something actually change in that time?
It's hard to say. I think it was a bad run of fixtures, and it slightly got lost in the discussion around Fulham not picking up points, that those are 4 very tough fixtures. We also had Villa away, and this was when Villa were floundering a little bit, but they'd just picked up a win. And Fulham also never win at Villa Park. And I know those kind of hoodies aren't really real, but it is real. Like, we do just never win at Villa Park. It's never happened. It never will happen. And, well, history buffs will correct me that it has happened in the past, but it does never happen. Bournemouth, Villa, all of them, none of them were we like comprehensively destroyed. It wasn't like there was a 4-0, 4-1 in that. Like, the biggest scoreline difference was 3-1. So it wasn't like we were getting totally ruined on the pitch and playing awfully. Newcastle was a last-minute winner from them. Fine. It's Newcastle away. It's a difficult game, as you said. Also, we were going through an injury crisis at the time, which obviously was underreported on. Nobody really cares about Fulham's injury crisis. But there was a point where we didn't have a fit striker. Midfielders were out. The defenders were out. Like, this pitch, the squad looked really threadbare, and wondering how we were going to fill a bench for senior players. So I think, considering all of that, it was fine. And then the Wolves game, I think, was a big relief. Obviously, Wolves are dreadful, and Wolves also went down to 10 in that match. But it was a big relief to show that we can be at home and comprehensively beat a team that we're better than. And though, it was 3-0. Again, it could have been a lot more that day. We were just so much better. And Vitor Pereira lost his job off the back of it. So, yeah, I think the Everton game that happened recently is the big concerning one. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to focus on that Everton game, I mean, so what was it? Was it just a big shock? Because obviously you think, oh, well, we've turned it around after beating Wolves, and we'll go back on a decent run after 4 straight defeats. I mean, was that the big disappointment, or by just getting beat? Or you've said that the performance was really worrying. Was it kind of the body language of the players, or was it the tactics? I mean, what was worrying about it?
It just looked like we didn't have any ideas in front of goal. And that, I think, it's very concerning to see that. And yes, like, it's Everton away. It's not necessarily the world's easiest game, but they came into it with 1 win and 8. So it wasn't like they were on an incredible run of form. And Moyes has had Silva's number a little bit over the past few years, ironically. But even then, it felt like it was in the palm of our hands. There was a potential there, and we just went, and all the players were back from injury, and we just went and did absolutely nothing on the pitch. And everyone thought, why? It was so not worth it. Like, it wasn't even worth as a spectator showing up to watch in some ways, because the performance was just so poor. And I think that is when you start to worry, when it doesn't look like there are signs of life or reasons for such a poor performance. But having said that, it was only one performance, and it was away from home. And Everton were very good that day. So maybe it was just a once-off, we can hope.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, doing a bit of research for this, of course, I saw that easy to see that it leaves Fulham 3 places and 1 point above the relegation zone. But I did see that you released an emergency podcast during the international break to talk about Silva's future. So what's the latest?
So my understanding is, thank goodness, Marco Silva has not been sacked. So that's good. There was a lot of talk at the beginning of the international break, like Monday, Tuesday. There was a news that came out from The Times and TalkSport, I believe, did a collab. And about that there were going to be talks about Marco Silva's future at Fulham, which every Fulham fan saw that news and their hearts sunk, like, taking that at face value. We've had 5 losses out of 6. Is Silva going to be sacked? I think across the board, Fulham fans don't want Silva to go. He's done so much for us. We don't have short memories. Before Marco Silva, we were a yo-yo team, and often you end up yoing the wrong way. And now we're a stable Premier League team who's had great runs in the Cups. So when that news came out, heart sunk. Then there was some more news that Silva was talking about contract extensions, and we were all a bit confused about what the talk were. And then we kind of all sat down and we hashed it out on that emergency podcast. And it basically feels like there isn't a huge amount of new news. Like you'd expect a manager in the last year of his contract to have talks with the owners about either extending or not doing that. Obviously, January transfer window, you would quite like to get Marco Silva signed before then. But Silva's like, you didn't back me in the transfer window, so I need to see whether you back me before I put pen to paper. So it kind of like a slight impasse in that sense. And obviously the comments made towards the owners over the summer weren't always the most glowing about the transfer business. So that was kind of where things were at. I think what's more interesting though is obviously the news was leaked from somewhere. Like someone wanted it to be news. And is it Silva's team trying to force the club to say, look, I want you to back me and I want it to be known that things are a bit unstable here and I'm looking to go elsewhere or I'm willing to hear offers? Or is it the club saying that they're, having talks with Silva and making Silva feel a little bit uncertain about, if he's sacked from Fulham, will he actually be able to get an upwards move? Will he have to move downwards, etc., etc. It seems that there is no news, which is a relief. There's no concrete news. Apart from yesterday, apparently the club have offered Silva a 3-year deal. So that's interesting. Wow. But I don't know whether he will accept it because apparently he wants a release clause and a 5-year deal. So we will see. Oh. But for the moment, I'm not worried about it. I tell myself.
Okay, interesting stuff. Because I was just wondering while you were saying that, because I'll not kind of, obviously there's issues with a former Fulham owner, of course, which we'll kind of not get into. Mm-hmm. But the current owner of Fulham's quite an interesting fella, isn't he?
Very much so. Yeah. He also owns the Jags in the States, which is an NFL team, and his son Tony Khan is our director of football, who you might know from the world of wrestling as well, or not if you're not into wrestling like me.
I don't, I have to admit.
Yeah, me neither. But I do know him from always tweeting about wrestling and never really seeming interesting in Fulham. It's maybe a bit harsh. I think so. It's an interesting one. I would love to be inside their heads and understand what their motives are for owning Fulham. They've just built this very flashy, expensive new stand. But I don't know whether they love Fulham and they want to invest in Fulham and make Fulham shine, or whether they're trying to invest in a team to the point where it's stable and then sell it onto someone else and make a profit. I don't know. They've put a lot of money into the club in lots of ways. And there's quite a lot of upset around Fulham fans about decisions like ticket prices and ticketing at the club. I really don't mind if the expensive tickets are really expensive. It doesn't bother me at all if the most expensive tickets in the stadium are however much money. But when the cheapest tickets in a stadium are also becoming a lot of money to watch Premier League football, I just think that's poor. And that means that young Fulham fans can't go. Like I was going with my dad when I was a kid because tickets were cheap. If tickets were really expensive, he wouldn't have been able to bring me. So yeah, I think that is a concern about strategy, like sort of long term for the club for sure.
Yeah. Well, just to go slightly off on a tangent, because thinking about Fulham, you mentioned the trying to kind of the building swanky new stands and all of this sort of stuff, which of course, look, you've got to keep everything kind of modern and you've got to keep everything to a certain standard. But I've been to Craven Cottage and I love going to Craven Cottage because it has there's no other club. You go to Craven Cottage and you know fine well where you are, and it's got a certain feeling about it. And I imagine a Fulham fan's in a strange place where, of course, you would maybe love a massive all-seater stadium, and that you'd want 80,000 there and all this sort of stuff. But Craven Cottage has to be Craven Cottage, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, but best stadium in the world.
Yeah,
I love it. I don't see us moving in even the medium term. And I think having been to Everton recently, we're going to Spurs next weekend after Sunderland. Obviously, like I've been to West Ham 3 times. I will not be going this year. going to those new stadiums, there always does feel something slightly different about them, and not always in a good way. And I mean, West Ham obviously is the prime example of that, because the London Stadium is such a dreadful place to watch football. But even Spurs and Everton, it's just a slightly different vibe. I think Fulham fans love Craven Cottage. We never want to leave. And I also don't know if there's really demand in terms of a bigger stadium from Fulham fans. We are quite a small fan base. Fans, if they want to get a ticket at the stadium, generally can, like, they are available to buy, even if they are incredibly expensive and prohibitive in that sense. So, yeah, in that case, I never want to move.
Yeah, well, I was going to say with West Ham, you're not that much further away from your seat in West London as you are actually in your seat from the pitch, really, are you? But yeah, I mean,
it's pretty bad.
going back to the Marco Silva thing, I mean, when the rumours came out, was there anybody Fulham fans were going, oh, well, actually, if we do move him on, we can get so-and-so in? Was there a name at the top of that list?
No, not at all. There are obviously options, right? There are other managers that exist that are out of work. But the name at the top of the list is Brendan Rodgers, and no offense to Brendan Rodgers, but it's not an upgrade on what we've got currently. So, yeah, I never ever wanted that to happen.
Yeah, Brendan Rodgers is going to be a cloud over any manager who loses their job in the bottom 10 of the Premier League, isn't it, at the minute with him out there?
And it's also one of those, like, if we couldn't attract him, and then are we gonna be ringing up like Gary O'Neill or something? Because again, that is not an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at the game on Saturday as well, does that mean, how much pressure's on this game? Because obviously, look, I mean, regardless of kind of where we are in the league at the moment, we're still the club that came up with the playoffs. There's still an expectation to beat Sunderland, especially at home. And, you had that performance against Everton, so fans are probably expecting something from the team. And then, as you mentioned earlier on, you've got Spurs away to follow, then Man City and Palace at home, which are tough games. So how much pressure's on this game?
Loads. I think it's actually quite difficult to overstate how much pressure there is on this game. I feel like Fulham fans, there could be a real mood shift either way. The mood at the moment is pretty sort of medium to low. It could be absolutely catastrophic come 5 p.m. on Sunday, but it could be joyous and happy. And I think with what's coming up as well and what's happened, a home game against a newly promoted side, you'd hope, we'd be able to do something. It's obviously incredibly frustrating how well Sunderland have done and how good you guys look. And also another thing for Sunderland fans, another kernel of hope, as well as Fulham's terrible creation in front of goal and all that kind of thing, is that Fulham's record after international breaks is absolutely shocking. Like, really, really bad. We won that Leeds game, but that was a 94th minute own goal against a team that was absolutely dreadful. It wasn't like we played well that day. And we haven't played well after international break since I was going back through the results a few weeks ago before the last one. And we haven't played well after an international break under Marco Silva, I don't think. I would go that far.
Well, there was the defeat against Arsenal, which followed the international break, where I think you ran them close.
Yeah, well, it was 1-0. We didn't have a shot on target, but like Arsenal don't really concede shots on target, apart from against you guys, obviously. So, yeah, but that day we didn't create anything, but we always just play very badly. I guess some of our important players go away and there isn't the time for that proper bonding and stuff, but yeah, I feel like it might be a bit turgid from Fulham yet again.
Well, yeah, just on that pressure, do you think with those games to follow, if he doesn't get a result against Sunderland, do you think that'll make the owners a bit nervous?
It's hard to say. I just don't. It's hard because if we lose 5 out of our next 6, obviously, like, no manager could withstand that, really, could they? Yeah, what he's done for Fulham, he's got so much credit in the bank amongst fans, amongst the players, I assume, amongst the owners, I also assume. So I don't know. It does worry me. Like, this game is huge. And then going to Spurs next weekend, who don't have a great record at home, again, is absolutely massive as well.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that might actually have an impact on how he sets up? Because, I mean, I don't know if he's got a typical way of setting his side up, especially at home. But do you think because there's so much pressure on the game, he might actually tinker with things. He might actually, does he make them a little bit more tight, not to go behind because there's so much emphasis on not losing the game?
Mm. I don't know if a draw is enough. I don't think a draw would be enough in terms of the mood shift. So, and we've been good at home as well, generally. But we lost that Arsenal game at home, but otherwise we drew against Man United. We won against Leeds, even though we performed very badly, and we won against Brentford in a very impressive game. We also beat Wolves very comfortably at home. We won both our cup games at home, not with much pizzazz or oomph, but still got past the teams. So I think he has to go for a win. Again, coming up against the newly promoted side, very frustrating for us that you guys are in the Champions League places, but we can't set out with a defensive lineup. It would be catastrophic. We did weirdly last season when we played Ipswich at home, start with a 5 at the back. That was very quickly changed at half time, and we looked a lot better for the change.
Yeah. So if Sunderland have done their homework on Fulham, I mean, what we're going to be worried about the most, and if we've looked at you, what plan are we going to come up with to have our best chance of getting something from the game?
Oh, that is a great question. This is what is difficult. I don't think that there's any specific area of weakness defensively that I'm like, oh, that player is way out of their depth. We do have a mistake in us. I think everyone's got a mistake in them at points. Fulham sometimes more than most. But interestingly, Fulham have conceded quite a lot of long-range shots. And this is a difficult one because I don't think the goalkeeper is bad at all. I don't think goalkeeper is a problem for Fulham at all. I think he's great, actually, and has been very, very solid for us. But those long-range shots from sort of the edge of the area into the top corner, it feels like we're conceding those at a rate of knots. And so if Sunderland I don't know if you guys do regularly take longer shots, but if you are, chances are one of them will go in.
Yeah, might need Xhaka to put his shooting boots on, maybe, but I'm not sure. He scored a deflected goal against Everton, so maybe get him getting off the mark. But yeah, I mean, look, you've mentioned it a few times, but what have you made of Sunderland so far? Because look, we're in a Champions League place, but we're just kind of battling away in every game, seemingly.
Well, I loved your guys' win over Chelsea, obviously.
Oh yes, of course.
As a Fulham fan, I love every single time Chelsea lose. I mean, I've been very impressed from what I've seen. I haven't watched loads of Sunderland, I'll be honest. I haven't watched full 90s every week, but when they've been on the telly and obviously watch Match of the Day and stuff and the highlights, been very impressed by your organisation, honestly. And also just your home form as well. That Arsenal game. So impressive. And then I watched the Everton game. Thought in the first half, I was a bit shaky, but managed to turn it around so comfortably in that second half and really battered Everton, I thought. So, yeah, I've just been very impressed. I look on very jealously from the lower echelons on the table at what you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, that was our worst 45 minutes of the season against Everton. But based on that, I mean, what do Fulham fans are going to be? We said there's this weird split, isn't it, in a mindset where you're playing a newly promoted side who came up through the playoffs, so you're thinking, right, this is a chance to get 3 points. But then you look at Sunderland's position at the table and it doesn't quite match up. So Fulham fans going along to Craven Cottage, what do you think they're expecting out of Saturday's game?
I think everyone is looking to win it. Obviously, that seems like an obvious thing to say, but Fulham fans are not expecting to. We would never expect to win a game, but I think the pressure is really high, and we want it to be for us on Saturday. And I think that's kind of the mindset in terms of expectation. I think in terms of lineup and looking at what sort of players will feature, we have an option of quite a defensive double pivot that we've played quite a lot, but I think that kind of has to be out for this game. And generally our home games and most of our away games, I really think it stifles us in an attacking sense. And we played it against Everton and just looked absolutely toothless. It served us well at points, but I'm hoping that we'll see either one of Sanderberg or Sasha Lukic alongside Alex Iwobi in the double pivot in the middle. And Iwobi can roam forward. He's quite an attacking player. And then that frees up Kevin to go on the left wing, Josh King in front of him. And then on the right, probably Harry Wilson. And that means that we can have a slightly more attacking team that looks like it's ready to go and just hope that we have the defensive stability, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you for a prediction on the game, but just in terms of like your gut feeling, how do you see the game playing out? Do you think Fulham's just going to have a lot of the ball? Do you think, are they going to keep possession and Sunderland are going to wait for our chance? I mean, how do you see it playing out?
I think there's going to be I feel it's going to be a big moment towards the end of the game. It's really exciting for one team or the other. Hopefully us. I think Fulham often start brightly at home, and then if we don't manage to score during that time, it can be a bit nervy as we enter the second half. And then I hope, Sunderland will come into themselves a bit, maybe, and see. I don't know. The way I think, we'll start brightly, fade a bit, bring on some subs in the 60th minute, have a little bit more oomph, hopefully, and then be able, fingers crossed, to get over the line. But it is hard to say. And there have been moments where our heads have gone and we haven't done anything this season. So it could very much be one of those.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly on that. Do you think Sunderland could play into that a little bit in terms of that pressure where if it's, let's 0-0 and an hour gone, the Fulham fans might start to turn a little bit?
Hugely. Yeah. I think Sunderland, you guys will definitely be able to capitalise on that if there is that tension on the stadium. Craven Cottage isn't allowed a stadium, obviously. But when there's discontent, when you can hear it rumbling, the players obviously trying to feed off good energy. If the energy is turning bad, there will definitely be an opportunity there for Sunderland to capitalise.
Yeah. Well, I assume you're going to be there and you're looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit nervous, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. Just a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff's nice, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I think everyone's looking forward to it. So I think that's a good place to leave us today. So other than the result, I hope you enjoy your weekend, Elizabeth. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and we do want Fulham to stay up because even though we have to remortgage our house to get a pint down there. It is a fantastic stadium to come to. So do hope you do well for the rest of the season. But thanks again for everyone for listening. Don't forget, we'll have even more build-up on the Rugby Report website, and we'll have pods dropping every day, including on match day before and after kickoff. So we'll have every base covered, so look out for all of that. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sports on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This winter's Ashes series is lining up to be one of the most exciting in a generation. Get all the latest reaction immediately after all 5 of the test matches on the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast with myself, Gaz Rana, and former England cricketer Mark Butcher. Search Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.